Hey, everybody. Welcome to the God Squad pod, where we uncover the Christian nationalist nonsense, the fundamentalist fuckwittery, and the hypocrisy going on in our country. And we do it all from a progressive theological lens with a little faith, politics, and sanity. I am Dillon Desimber, the tattooed theologian, and she is the Desimber Rose, the mic drop specialist in the house. Hey, D, how you doing?
Hey, Dillon, what's going on? Where are we at in the twilight zone of the United States these days?
I don't know. We got presidents blowing up ships, people, fishing boats, and cover-ups and all kind of foolishness. But that's for another night, because tonight we're gonna trust the process. We're going to do a deep dive into process theology with Dr. Bruce Epperly, a theologian. He is the theologian in residence at Westmoreland Congregational United Church of Christ and a professor in theology and spirituality at Wesley Theological Seminary, the author of 80 books. I have a hard time wrapping my head around that. 80 books, and including the one that we're going to be talking about tonight, Process Theology, a guide for the perplexed. So, without further ado, Dr. Bruce Epperly. Oops.
Oh, there I am. There I am. Oh, now we're all there. Holy Trinity, isn't it? Well, you know, I need my place in the sun. Yes, it's good to be here tonight, and to Dillon and Desimber, to be here in this place with you, and to maybe dive deep. We'll see how deep we go. We might go deep and wide. There's a fountain flowing deep and wide. I might start preaching tonight. Glory, hallelujah. God's truth is marching on. I might start preaching tonight.
Well, let's go. Let's go.
Start preaching and singing.
We have talked about process theology a little bit on this show before. And early in your book, you say that theology at its best transforms people's lives by providing an insightful vision of reality that enables people to find meaning, inspiration, and challenge. And I love that quote because that's why we study theology, and that's why theology is cool, y'all. But a lot of people have never heard of process theology. A lot of people, the only theology that they know is Calvinism and penal substitution and, you know, the kind of American evangelical fundamentalism that we talk about a lot. So what is process theology, Bruce, and how is it distinguished from, I guess, for lack of a better term, more mainstream theological schools?
Okay, well, in some parts of the world, process is mainstream, but and maybe even in the Bible, maybe even with carpenters and tent makers, you might even find process theology. Again, that's your new book. I'm going to claim that book is going to be out there in 2026. I'm claiming. I'm going to start praying for that book. Lay hands on it right now.
I'm touching and agreeing with Brother Epperly.
Yeah, I sense that. I sense that. Well, you know, we're already doing process theology. I've been a practical theologian for years. I had either the benefit or the curse of spending 45 years in the academy, and virtually all of those 45 years I pastored a church, either a university church or a congregation. And even now I'm still doing that. I can't seem to get away from it. And I believe that good theology should be able to be preached, and preaching should be theological.
Yeah.
You know, it needs to be deep and wide, as the song goes. And I'll give you some words to describe it. I'm not going to give you the academic description. You might have gotten that at Claremont with, and I should say Claremont. I can't think that's where I did my graduate work at seminary. You might have gotten that at Lancaster Seminary with Lee Barrett. I know assigns my book over there at Lancaster.
Yeah.
He probably will explain it much more complexly than I will. But let's just think of a river flowing. Let's just think of the world as a river flowing, as process as being the reality, change, emergence, transformation. We can't even avoid it. We can't even avoid it. The river never stands still. The Tao is never static.
Right.
History is always moving. The moral arc of history is moving forward and backwards. So the first part of it is process. But there are all sorts of other parts of it. And you can interrupt me anytime, by the way. I don't take anything personally. The other part is relational. Interdependence is the heart of this. A lot of theology focuses on the self. I know you were talking about the penal substitutionary atonement. Praise the Lord for that. I know you were talking about that. And that usually is very individualistic, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Jesus died for me. Jesus died for me. And if I do the right things, I'll be saved. You know, many people mistake personal salvation for individual salvation. I'm all for personal salvation. I just don't think you can have individual salvation.
Now, pause. You got to tell people because we got a wide range of listeners. So
okay,
you may have lost some people on that. What is even the difference between?
Well, you may even have to invite me back to explain it more. But let's say personal salvation is the sense that God is present in our lives, that God touches us, that faith comes to us one at a time and all at a time. When I talk about individual salvation, it is Jesus and me, God and me. How I can do a transaction that gets me saved. Personal salvation is about persons in relationship with God and the world. It's about mysticism. It's about feeling the Spirit moving within you. It's about the sense of rightness or wrongness, and the sense that maybe, as that old song goes, he walks with me and talks with me and tells me I am his own. But he says that, but God says that to everyone. And God has a personal relationship with everyone, including people we don't like.
That's right.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
But God is always personal. That's what it means for God to be in relationship. A lot of times people think of relationship as just me and Jesus. And of course, certainly I have a personal relationship with Jesus, but I assume everyone else does. And I assume having a relationship with Jesus makes the world bigger and not smaller. You know, one of the founders of Process Theology, Alfred North Whitehead, said that, you know, good religion goes from individualism and self-interest to world loyalty. So in a sense that there is a sense that God is touching each one of us, and again, I love this phrase. It comes from a variety of sources. No one really can footnote it, but Bonaventure and Nicholas of Cusa talk about this. God is like a circle or a sphere whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere.
I like that.
Every God centers everyone. And sometimes we know it. You know, I love the story of Jacob. I'm a good old biblical preacher, so I believe the Bible's important. Like your Professor Will Gaffney over there at Bright.
Yes.
Who's one of the brightest stars out there. That God is at work in the world. And Jacob has this dream one night. He wakes up and says, God was in this place and I did not know it. God is the center everywhere. And it's the center where we are. Each moment God is communicating, and sometimes we recognize it. That works only if God is doing it to everyone and with everyone. You know, when Theodore Parker, in the 19th century Unitarian pastor, coined this phrase that was popularized by Martin Luther King and Barack Obama, President Obama, the President Obama. You know, the moral arc of history. The moral arc is going through everything, but it goes through the history of saying yes and no to it moment by moment by moment. You know, I was doing a Bible study. I've been doing Bible studies on the side for 40 years, starting as a college chaplain. I still do them for fun. And we were talking this morning about a book from the social gospel era, the 1920s, called In His Steps. It's a little dated by our standards, but the word that became popular about 2 decades ago's phrase, "What would Jesus do?" came from that book. It was a social gospel book. It was a socially relevant book, socially activist book, to constantly wake up and say, God is inspiring me, and where is God taking me today, and what is God about? Process theology also is about experience, that the experience is universal, from the tiniest spark in outer space to the cells of a rock. Experience is universal and varied. And that's a big deal, because wherever there's experience, there's value. Wherever there's experience, there's value. Psalm 148, let everything that breathes praise God. It talks about the sun and the stars, and I lived up in the Northeast, and they talked about hail praising God, and all that God is present and working in all things. We don't live in a godless world. We may act like it's godless, but we don't live in a godless world. God's not on the outside. One of that part of that penal substitutionary atonement is that God's out there somewhere and has to come in supernaturally.
Right.
What if God's already here, subtly influencing us, subtly beside us, inspiring us as we drive to the seminary or drive home, trying to get together for a podcast? Or if God's subtly inspiring us in the evening as we're thinking about a book we're writing. And God's not going to do the work for us, by the way. God's not omnipotent in the traditional sense of the word. In matter of fact, but a living God is constantly doing new things. And the God who has everything settled in advance can't grow.
Right. And that's a distinction between sort of the Calvinistic sovereignty of God, and I think it's a Charles Hartshorne that said God in God in all things and all things in God.
Right.
And that's the panentheistic idea that sort of undergirds process theology. Is that correct, or am I wide of the mark?
Facets of it, and think of that: God in all things. Again, it's like that circle, isn't it? Everyone and everything you've touched has been touched by God, and has something, as the Quakers would say, something of God in it. That's a big deal. You can't separate the world into the godded and the godless. You can't separate the world into those who are chosen and not chosen. Everyone's chosen because God's present in their lives. That's the meaning of the practical and political and theological meaning of omnipresence, is God's present everywhere. And that you cannot be a little omnipresent. You either are or you aren't. It's God's either got to be moving through everyone. And if God is love, then everything God is doing is choosing for love in a persuasive way, not in a sovereign way that determines everything. Everyone, even the ones we don't like, and I think that's an important thing to remember. I know that in the political realm, there are people I don't like. I could almost feel like the author of Psalm 139, one of the greatest Psalms in the Bible, who writes, where can I go from your spirit? If I go into the heavens, you are there. If I descend into the depths, you are there. You know what I'm talking about. And then in the midst of it, he catches himself. I hate them. I hate them with a holy hatred. I mean, most of the time that's left out of responsive readings in church. It seems a little impolite. And then he catches himself again and says, search me and know that if there any wrong way in me, and lead me toward the path everlasting. I think, again, I've tried over the last few decades, once I liberated myself from graduate school and began to realize that I became my own theologian, that didn't have to, I had to be a better theologian, but I didn't have to please anybody as a theologian. They either accepted my article or they didn't. They either accepted my book or they didn't, but I didn't have to please them. was a sense of making process for the people. This stuff preaches. This stuff preaches. But sadly, it's been too much in the academic realm, and I'm an academic. You know, was reading Augustine this morning, so I guess I'm somewhat of an academic. And I was reading a little bit of Justo Gonzalez, who's probably written the best history of Christianity. You'll probably read it later on December at school. It is the classic. It's the best.
It's sitting like 5 feet from me right now, both volumes.
You know, you can be a theologian like the tent maker and the carpenter who speaks to communicate.
Right.
And process can be communicated because everyone experiences these moments.
Yes.
I don't know if it's possible to experience Calvinism, because we have this sense that we're making choices, right? We have a sense that we chose to do a left turn and not a right. We chose to stop and get an ice cream cone on the way home. We chose to turn on this tape rather than another. And those choices are not absolute choices. They're relational choices. They're determined by a lot of other factors. But in this very moment, as Viktor Frankl says, we have the freedom to shape our attitude. That little freedom, that little light of mine, we'll let it shine. We have that freedom. The Calvinist is damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're either elect or not, and there's nothing you can do about it. And God endured all that hell through eternity. God has to endure choosing creatures that God doesn't love from all eternity. That must be a terrible life for God.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like
I don't understand Calvinism.
God. You know, Groundhog Day for God over and over, over and over.
Well, you mentioned that you're an academic, and that, you know, one of the things that's great about this particular book, Process Theology, A Guide for the Perplexed, is that it's light on the technical jargon.
Yeah.
But very thorough. And yet it's still very heady stuff. I've read it twice now, once for Lee, and once for this episode. And it can be a little bit hard to wrap your head around at times, because it is so wildly different in a lot of ways. And there's a lot that resonates with me in here. But how does it go from the sort of ivory tower? How do you bridge that gap from the ivory tower to the public theology or the on the street theology that I kind of describe sometimes?
Well, you live it, and you don't try to be the smartest person in the room. The goal of good theology is to communicate and to know who's in front of you. Now, I can talk about ontological and existential and teleological about as well as anybody, I suspect. Having said that, wouldn't it be better for the average person to say, in this moment, you have a choice, and that choice could be life or death? Or as Mother Teresa, Saint Teresa says, do something beautiful for God. Or you could talk about the various eternal aspects of God, or you could quote Lamentations 3:22-23. God is faithful and God's mercies are new every morning. Now that's real process theology, because it combines the things that we can count on that are unchanging and the things that are always changing. And when God's mercies are new every morning, it means God's constantly doing new things. That God's not trapped in our past. We're not trapped in our past. The world isn't trapped in its past. And God is doing new thing. And then, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All that I've needed, thy hand has provided. You know, I sing sometimes I'm singing in my classes and singing when I preach. It's a very rare thing for a progressive theologian to sing while they're preaching. But if something touches me, I mean, we're supposed to be God's frozen chosen, after all. It's no life beneath the neck. But I believe that good theology is holistic. Good theology touches your cells and it touches your soul. You know, it's heart and head, as Howard Thurman says in his autobiography, With Heart and Head. it touches the whole person. And I think, again, I think you'd have to try to live your theology. I don't necessarily agree with everything that Martin Luther said. Right. But Luther made this comment that, theology is constantly dying and being reborn. In a sense of feeling that poignancy of life, feeling that existential sense of being lost and then found, and lost and then discovering you were really never lost to begin with. And I think process can be done the same way, because I believe it can be lived. I'm not as adventurous in some ways as perhaps I'd like to be. It's very adventurous theology. I mean, when I had a recent MRI, I wasn't looking forward to going into the MRI. I don't like small spaces. Had a childhood experience that always reminds me of this, but I wasn't too adventurous, and you don't usually hear this from process theologians. But I decided, well, I'll take Jesus in there with me into the MRI. It got a little crowded with Jesus, and I don't know what people thought we were doing in there, 2 men in the MRI together. But Jesus doesn't have any particular concern about what we think about Jesus. It's what Jesus thinks about us that matters, and that is love.
Yeah.
And it got me through the MRI.
Excellent.
Speaking of adventures, one of the things that you have been quoted to say is process theology is an adventure of ideas.
Yes.
More than that, process theology is an invitation to intellectual, spiritual, relational, and community adventures. Yes. So can you just speak to that a little bit? I don't think I've ever heard anyone categorize theology, any type of theology, as an adventure of ideas, but I love that concept altogether. That the idea of theology, and that you're going on an adventure, meaning you're exploring, you're discovering. When we think about what an adventure is, you're taking risk.
Yes. Yes, and many people think they've got it figured out. I keep reminding folks and myself that we have potentially 2 trillion galaxies in the universe, which is just a astrophysicist way of saying we don't know how many there are.
We don't know.
There's more than we can imagine.
Yes.
And we have billions of cells in our bodies. We're a little universe too. How can we expect to fathom the fullness of the universe or God? We have to be open to new possibilities and ideas. There is a proverb that comes from South Asia, I believe. It's one of these that a lot of people claim it, but it's my sense it comes from South Asia, Thailand, perhaps India, Myanmar, about the sight-impaired persons and the elephant. I don't know if you've heard that, where they're touching different parts of the elephant, and they're assuming that the part they touch is the elephant. It's like a hose. It's like a rope. It's shiny. It's grand. The elephant is always more, but the thing that I tried to improve on this wonderful proverb by really thinking about elephants. I wrote actually a book called The Elephant is Running. A real elephant doesn't stand still. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of elephants. Their ears are flapping. They make low noises that can be heard miles away. They mourn and they rejoice. They take good care of their neighbors. They protect. They even have good relations with humans. There's a wonderful movie. Maybe it's just The Elephant Keeper or something like that. That was short film that's just beautiful to see about the relationship of a couple to an elephant they had care of. We grasp new aspects of God as we move forward. The adventure. I think you can't get stuck in the past, whether it's the past of the way human life was 50 years ago or 100 years ago, the way you were last year. God is in the business of kind of finding a nice marriage of order and novelty. We need some order. I need to fiddle with this to figure out how to get a picture. And that's order, right? And the three of us sitting in our particular Brady Bunch Holy Trinity here is a type of order. But yet, who knows what will happen next?
Right.
We assume predictability until it's not. My brother used to say, and my brother was a troubled man in many ways, passed away many years ago. I'm doing okay till something happens. And that was he out of the mouth of my brother, who struggled with mental health issues on every axis you can imagine. That was about as true as anything goes. Order and novelty. But we might even embrace novelty. I mean, in the political realm, if a little bit, I think you can look at a variety of theologies or psychologies beneath the political issues of our time. But one of them, two areas that I think are at work in the political realm are just straight up denial. The straight up denial of what we don't like. The denial of wind energy and stopping funding of turbines up in the Northeast, the denial of climate change, in fact, doing the exact opposite, drill, the denial of facts that are looking at you, denial of diversity. I mean, how can you not notice diversity? And why would you want uniformity? I mean, I've been married for 46 years, and I will say that I would not want a marriage that was exactly the same tomorrow as today. There's predictability. There are certain things. My wife and I are faithful and loving to one another. And that's the big playground, right? That's the playground of consistency. God is love. What happens in the midst of that is like, watching LeBron James. There's basketball and there's LeBron James.
Right.
There's basketball and there's Ayala Boston. There's basketball and there's Brittany Griner. They play very different than I do when I go like that. And
that makes two of us.
We're playing the same game, but it sure does look different.
That's right.
And then another aspect, people are overwhelmed by change. I mean, that's been something that we in the progressive community were overwhelmed by the last election. We couldn't imagine it. And of course, the people who want to control want to keep you feeling overwhelmed.
That's right.
They want to keep you feeling overwhelmed with what are they going to do next? There's another,
and it's intentional. That constant drama, constant, borderline scandals all the time. And if you keep people's attention over here, you're not paying attention to what these folks are doing behind the curtain.
Well, yes, what the wizard's doing back there. And then there's creative transformation, which I think is the way of process, which is accepting that there is danger afoot, accepting that there's challenge afoot, and yet claiming the ability based on the acceptance that you still have agency in it. Think of it as a serious illness. Many people have come to realize during a serious illness that they still had freedom to make decisions. A good friend of mine was diagnosed with cancer. I've known her since high school. And the physician gave her 6 months to live. And she fired her physician. She's been 14 months since the diagnosis now. And I told her recently, we talk every week because I'm always trying to be on the side of healing. I'll try to get back to California in 2026. And said, well, I'll be waiting for you. Yeah, I'll be waiting for her. Now she knows she's got cancer. She goes, gets chemo. It's not curable, but it's become livable. It's become the sense of noticing that each day is a gift. And it's from the point of view of the tent maker, God is God and Caesar isn't.
Right.
That's the first thing to remember. Jeremiah, he shows up in the lectionary on September 28th, which is a next time I was in pulpit. So because I'm being in Ireland for a few weeks, I already wrote my sermon. But Jeremiah is told to buy a plot of land while Nebuchadnezzar's troops are at the gate of the city. I'm sure everybody thought he was stupid for doing that, buying a plot of land that he would never see harvested.
Mm.
And yet he's given this notion from God: buy that plot of land, get the title, get the deed, put it in a safe place, because 70 years from now, somebody's going to harvest that land. We have hope always occurs. What is it? Martin Luther King, I think, says we can deal with finite disappointment because we have infinite hope. Who thinks about Nebuchadnezzar these days? When was the last time you thought about Nebuchadnezzar? As seminarians and graduates, we don't give them Nebuchadnezzar much of a thought at all. I haven't thought of Pontius Pilate this week till now. Think of Mary of Nazareth. We think of Joseph, Jesus every day. Jeremiah gets invoked almost every day. I have plans for you for good, not for evil, for future with hope. I mean, Lord, that silly guy who was planning for a future he wouldn't see is alive, and Nebuchadnezzar is dead. And the moral arc of history keeps moving on, as they would say, and the preacher would say, glory, hallelujah.
And that's the hope. That's the hope that we have for those that are, operating in disappointment and despair still from the election. Believe it or not, there are people that are still trying to get over it. That's the hope that we have, that arc, no matter what they try to do, it's still reaching.
Yes.
And there's going to be a day that comes where we'll be in a different environment there. Now, hopefully there hasn't been too much destruction by this administration, but ultimately we're going to be all right. That's the faith that I have. That's the hope that I have.
God keeps moving through history, and if it's not going to be in this planet, it'll be somewhere else. I mean, I want this planet to be good. I'm not looking for any other life than the one I have right now. This is as good as it gets. In some ways, I woke up this morning, or as the psalmist would say, this is the day God has made, and I rejoice and be glad. I mean, you think again of John Lewis writing an article for the New York Times. He's going to be dead in a week. He writes an article, and it's about not giving up hope. And he knows his earthly days are numbered. He knows that he's going to be history in both senses of the word. He's going to be gone, but he's going to be history because he just got invoked here by me.
That's right.
I think of John Lewis almost every day. I think about his comments and about how that we can resist in ways appropriate to who we are, the challenges of our time, that we can make whatever we mean by good trouble, whether it's in my case working with refugees from Afghanistan and supporting them and housing, to writing, to going forth on No King's Day, to doing all manner of things, to just simply saying that God is God and those folks aren't.
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit about Jesus, because
let's have a little talk with Jesus, will we now?
In your book, you say that Jesus's message and mission, Process Theologians assert, was not supernaturally oriented toward life beyond the grave, but a call to embody God's vision for this life and this world. And that's something that Desimber and I have talked about a lot. It's not, as Lee would say, pie in the sky by and by.
Yep.
We got to live here now, right? The carpenter and the tent maker seem to have been wrong about the end of all things, at least, still and not yet, or not yet and almost, or whatever. So who is Jesus to Process Theologians, and does Process Theology transcend Christianity and pop up in other faith traditions?
Well, God does. So start with that. And if your theology is worth anything, it has to be bigger than your religious tradition.
Right.
That's right.
One of my mentors, and I had a chance to hear him talk a couple times, is Howard Thurman. I don't know if you know Howard Thurman. And he was in India, and he was criticized as being sort of an Uncle Tom, if you will, for being a Christian and an African American, given the status of Jim Crow.
Right.
And Thurman responds saying, my critique of Christianity is far deeper than yours could ever be, but I distinguish between Christianity and the way of Jesus.
Yes.
I distinguish between, the Christians early on struggled with this, and they're still struggling with this. How big is your Jesus? How big is your God? Some people have some pint-sized Jesuses. You can put them on your dashboard and be done with it. I don't want a pint-sized Jesus. I want the Jesuses who's embodied everywhere and anywhere in a more embodied approach of John 1, wherever the God's light enters the world, enlightening everyone. I'm quite content with other traditions being revelatory of God too.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm quite content with people who have no tradition being revelatory of God also. If God is omnipresent, sometimes those who are outside the tradition and critical can say very important things to the tradition, that where the tradition has no clothes, where the tradition has been too tied in with empire, where the tradition has been looking at that other world and not realizing it one world at a time. I am very much interested in Jesus. I've written a couple books on the Gospels and on the healings of Jesus, and then my favorite Jesus book that I've written, I'll give myself a little plug here. It's a great book. Jesus, Mystic, Healer, and Prophet. So when I think of Jesus, I don't think of a divine cassette implanted in a human body. I think of an alignment with God, and God has choice in this matter too, by the way. God is not an amorphous being. God has privileges and preferences, and God privileges certain things. Just listen to Mary's Magnificat. Jesus was sense of when Jesus says, I and the Father are one, I don't think he's speculating on the Holy Trinity. And I'm Trinitarian, by the way, but don't hold it against me. But he's saying that we are one in purpose. We are one in purpose. And even when Jesus is dealing with the problems, like he really doesn't want to die. It's amazing that that's in the Gospels. Jesus says, I wish this cup would pass from me, right? Yeah. And when he's saying, not my will, but thine, he's not talking about predestination. He's talking about carrying his mission toward what he believes is his destiny. Carrying it. He's making a choice there. He's not a puppet. Jesus is a healer. I happen to take seriously the healing stories of Jesus. I don't see them as supernatural. I think there's a deeper naturalism than we can imagine. We've all experienced this. We've experienced energies that we didn't think we've had. We experienced insights that came to us perhaps from other sources than our own. We might have spoken in tongues out of nowhere, or we might have had an experience of the universe, hearing us, as Pythagoras would say, the harmony of the spheres. I think it was Richie Havens, the singer who was very popular in my era in the 60s, and the sort of the Woodstock Summer of Love generation, said that he thought the sound of the city was a B flat. Harmony of the spheres. Healing is not from the outside, it's from all around and from the inside. So when Jesus touches this woman touches Jesus, the woman of the flow of blood, this is the way I see it. Mm-hmm. Her faith opens her to a power greater than herself, and a power flows from Jesus, but it's flowing in this world. Again, one of the reasons people wanted a supernatural God was that they could control revelation. If you've got a supernatural God, God only acts through established channels. Heaven forbid that they be women. Heaven forbid that they might be non-Europeans. Heaven forbid that they might be children. Heaven forbid they might be gay. Heaven forbid that, all those things. Heaven forbid. Supernaturalism just shoots right down there from God to God's appointed people who know what should be known, and the rest falls out of it. What if God is healing presence and revelation presence is everywhere? There's a democracy of revelation. And then the prophet, Jesus. Jesus never, ever abandoned the prophetic teachings. Again, he quotes Isaiah in his first message, at least in Luke's gospel. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to preach good news.
Right. And he leaves out the wrath part.
Yeah. I mean, we can do without that. We create enough wrath of our own without God having to get involved. We create enough wrath of our own and fear of our own without having to put it on God. I think God's in the business of healing and not hurting.
Yeah. I have a reflection while you were talking about the woman with the issue of blood. I was reminded, I pastored for the better part of 10 years, a little over 10 years. And one of the sermons I preached on was Who Touched Me? And it was dealing with that story in the Bible. And when all the people were thronging Jesus, and he would stop and was like, who touched me? And the disciples were like, what are you even talking, bruh? like my kids might say, bruh, are you serious right now? Everybody's touching you. Are you playing? And he was like, no. Somebody touched me and I felt virtue go out of me. And I think about that in relation to what you're saying as far as God is everywhere, up, down, in between, inside out.
Yes.
And it's the difference between everybody that was was my sermon foundation. The difference between everybody that was touching Christ versus this woman that touched Christ, and she didn't even touch him. She touched something that was touching him. I went into a whole thing about who's touching you, and by encountering you, encountering God, because she didn't touch him. She touched him. She didn't touch him. So the thought was she touched him with expectation. And when you're expecting something, you know what I'm saying? When you're encountering God with expectation, when you're encountering faith with expectation, when you're encountering process theology and the exploration and adventure of it, and the exploration and journey of your faith with expectation, you're going to get something. It's like if you're looking for something, you're going to find something.
Yeah.
And the problem that I have I no longer call myself a Christian. I say that I'm a follower of Christ. Because the problem I have with many Christians is they are not any longer encountering God with expectation. There's too much ritual. There's too much tradition. There's too much program. They're just taking whatever comes across the pulpit, and that's it. There's no adventure. There's no exploration. There's no discovery. There's no questions being asked. As a matter of fact, they are discouraged from asking questions. Just take what I tell you is the truth. Trust it. That's it. And so that was the difference. And I feel like, how can you have a real relationship with God without expectation? And how can you truly receive? Everyone around Jesus was waiting for him to do something, to heal them, to bless them, to whatever. They were waiting for him to do it. This woman did something herself. You know what I'm saying? She did something. She activated what was already there. None of the other people activated that. It was already there. They were begging for it, but she took it.
I mean, it's interesting that virtually even Jesus is an actor in the healing stories, but there is a good deal of agency in the healing stories by the human in search of healing for themselves or for another. I mean, the Syrophoenician woman, the man Bartimaeus who cries out, and the Syrophoenician woman who sort of challenges, gives a little pushback to Jesus on his apparent ethnocentrism there. And they are agents. They are agents. And you know, healings come in lots of ways. Sometimes they just happen. The child is asleep. I don't believe the child was dead, but the child was in a coma, I think. But you know, sometimes a touch will wake you up. That in no way, speaking of healing, in no way makes healing less significant if it's naturalistic than if it's supernaturalist. As a matter of fact, I find the notion of supernatural healings almost in many ways more problematic, not because they're supernatural, but because they limit where it can happen again and who can do it. One of the virtues of the Pentecostal movement is that there is a certain claim that the Spirit can touch and fill anyone. And while I'm not Pentecostal myself, although I believe that people like me should be more Pentecostal in many ways, should be more Spirit-filled and open to the Spirit, there's a sense of democracy of the Spirit there. You know, the Pentecostal churches did give women leadership before the mainline churches did. Because if God touched you and said, anointed you with a preaching power or a ministering power, you had to go with God. Regardless of what Paul said, you had to go with God. And of course, that I'll leave it to you, Dillon, to talk about those problematic Pauline passages, but they really aren't what they are literally suggesting. I mean, Paul is not really trying to keep women quiet. If you look at the corpus of Paul's writings, he has women associates and women who prophesy and in the early church. So I think he's talking about a particular situation
that
people have universalized to exclude. I mean, it's easier to universalize to exclude than to include, interesting enough for some people. I'd rather universalize to exclude. That's what it means to universalize, doesn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, Donald Trump someday may even have a mystical experience and start shouting and you know, he's a little worried about his soul right now. He made a comment.
It does seem that way.
You know, a little worried about his soul. Maybe if he stopped a war, he'd get a place in heaven in glory land. Maybe even there, if you know, I happen to believe that, in quotes, the people I don't like have to be loved by God too, and so I choose to pray for Donald Trump without any goal in mind other than that God be at work in his life. Why doesn't God heal everyone? Isn't that a challenge?
That's a great question.
And because it's sure, you know, the world has a lot of God in it, and it has a lot of the opposite, or maybe not even the opposite, that which is leaning toward God in ways that are dysfunctional. God,
and there's a lot of spiritual injury
yes,
based on that concept. Like, well, I didn't have enough faith. That's why God didn't heal my mother or something like that. Or God,
boy, isn't that abusive?
Heal my child because I guess I didn't pray hard enough. And when you start getting into that, it could really inflict moral harm on people, spiritual wounds on people.
And it's a refusal to see that life is often complicated and that there's many causes that enter into this moment of experience. And there's a larger story going on than we can fathom. I don't think that illness or cancer or car accidents or even the election of presidents is fully God-willed. You know, God's working in the interstices of things toward the best. But God gets resistance. I mean, as when you study the Bible, you'll discover that if you take the Bible stories seriously, especially the Hebraic scriptures, the First Testament, God doesn't seem to win too many battles along the way. The long haul may be in God's hands, but the children of Israel are constantly, if God says X, they're going to go Y. And it's a very honest description of the human condition, that we know the good but don't do it. Or we know we're made for love, but it's a lot easier just to be concerned about myself and my people. There still has to be the hope that even the most abject sinner among us, which might be me some days, I don't know, is also loved by God. I still believe we have to resist the domination system. We have to resist any form of sexism or misogyny or racism or homophobia or environmental ecocide. We have to resist that in whatever way we're called to do. But we also have to be prophetic healers. Again, back to Howard Thurman, who did read a little bit of Whitehead, by the way, and who and he quotes Whitehead in one of his books. Interestingly enough, I had to look for it because I forgot where it was, and then I asked my friend Tony Hunt up there in Baltimore. He's also an adjunct at Wesley. Said, "Can you find that Whitehead spot in there?" Because I was working on a book on Thurman and Whitehead, and said, "Yeah." And Thurman actually coined a term that I didn't know he coined, and then I used it, and now I have to attribute to him whenever I use it. He used the term holy adventure one time in his corpus. I've read almost all of Thurman, dealing with Christmas, and life is a holy adventure. It's a holy adventure. And Thurman, said we have to, when we resist, make life sometimes difficult for the people who are oppressing. But we have to also remember they're God's children too.
Right.
And
we don't become a monster to defeat a monster.
Yeah. We have to sometimes he uses the term shock treatment. Use a shock treatment to help them realize that they are akin to the people they're oppressing, and that they can't be saved at the end of the day until the other is saved. That salvation is never individual. It's personal, not individual. It's corporate. It's all of us. The Temptations, one time, if you know the Temptations, once had this song, "If there's a hell below, we're all going to go."
Yes.
And Nixon says, so it was written in the Nixon era. So I've got to go back now and turn on YouTube or Spotify and listen to this. But if there's a hell below, we're all going to go, which is a way of saying that we are in this together, that the fabric of interdependence of life, as Whitehead says, as King says, and King was a wonderful communicator of other people's ideas. That's not a critique of King, by the way. But he wrote his thesis on Henry Nelson Wyman, who was a process theologian. So when you think of that fabric of relationships, I cannot be what I'm intended to be until you are what you're intended to be, and you can't till I am. That's pure process theology. He said it in a way better than most process theologians could, and he deserves great kudos for that. But that Ubuntu, that interdependence of life, we're all in it together. We are because of one another.
Yeah. Towards the end of your book, you say healthy theology gives people a pathway to face tragedy, social change, and injustice with a sense of hope and empowerment. And right now we are in a historical moment, whether if you listen to Robert O. Paxton, it's straight up fascism. If you listen to somebody like Ruth Ben Ghiat, it might be authoritarianism. I don't want to split hairs. It's awful, right?
It's all the above.
Awful.
It's a troubled time.
I find a lot of resonance in this book, particularly because I'm a permaculture guy, and my first book is about permaculture and the golden rule, and one planet, and we're all connected in that way. But as we wrap this up, Bruce, give us some hope from process theology to help us meet this moment, because we need all hands on deck right now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's June Jordan. Does anyone know the poet June Jordan? Her poem to the South African women. Go look that up. I think that's the title. June Jordan poem for that. Now Barack Obama has quoted her. I don't know if he gave her credit. I mean, I'm a big Obama fan here, by the way. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Yeah. That's the last line of that poem to the South African women who, during apartheid, were marching against any sort of possible future that it looked bleak. And yet God raises up, that's good old traditional language, right? Raises up Tutu and Mandela to create a country that's different. And even some of the white Afrikaners' hearts were changed. That they would enter into this, they probably didn't initially want to do it any more than Peter wanted to eat shrimp at a feast. When God gave him that smorgasbord with Easter ham and shrimp on it and lobster, that unclean food. Peter didn't want to eat it, but eventually, he's heard God spoke to him. I'd speak to him 3 times, I think. And he said, okay, I'm going to have a little shrimp with a nice little dip there. And, I'm not sure about pork tenderloin, but yeah, maybe with a little barbecue on it, it'll be okay. And they were changed. And I think what we have to do is to keep acting hopefully in the way that we're called to be, Trouble don't last forever.
That's right.
I'm a real aficionado of spirituals. If you haven't read James Cone's book, the Spirituals and the Blues, it's worth reading. If you haven't read Howard Thurman's book, Deep River, the Negro Spiritual Speaks of Life and Death, it's worth reading. And you get the sense that times have been rough throughout history.
Yes.
And I think another way, besides your own spiritual practices, is to have a song in your heart. I'm a biblical Christian, which is a rare thing for progressive, but I've preached the Bible for 40 years. I write a lectionary help every week of the year. For doing it for 10 years, I probably got 500 of them on the adventurous lectionary. Paul and Silas are in prison. You know that. They've been falsely imprisoned. Singing. And the door opens. They don't want you to sing.
They don't want you to sing.
They don't want you to pray. They don't want you to meditate.
They don't want you to march.
You don't want you to march. This is the way that, whether it be the right or the left extremes, want to control the dialogue. But if you've got a song in your heart, so I suggest that one thing, this sounds like it's not going to do much good, but if you've got a song in your heart, you enjoy some liberation. Dorothy Day, the great social activist who got to be my age and couldn't march anymore and couldn't get arrested anymore. I think she was last arrested during the California grape boycotts. She said, I can't do that anymore, but I can still pray.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to pray for our leaders, as the Bible says, and pray that they have a sense of brokenheartedness. I'm speaking evangelical language here, that their hearts be broken.
Yeah.
Their hearts be broken and come open to have a sense of the pain that's out there, and a sense that most of them claim to be Christians, a sense of that Jesus is there where the pain is. Right. If they want to get on board with Jesus, they better be too. You don't want Jesus to leave you behind.
That'll preach every week.
Yes.
This has been a fantastic discussion, and we could do this a lot longer and a lot more often. But if you're interested in process theology, check out this book, Process Theology, A Guide for the Perplexed, Dr. Bruce Epperly. While we were talking, I just bought, because it's very convenient on the internet, to buy the Jesus Mystic Healer by Dr. Epperly as well.
Bruce, before we get coffee tomorrow. I mean, I'm a writer, and I know both of you are writers, and at the end of the day, we write out of love.
Right.
There's going to be that one person, and if one person finds the healing through your book or a transformation, that'll justify it.
There you go.
Amen.
Before we close the show, we normally do something called the Word on the Street. And tonight, Dee Desimber Rose is going to bring us that word on the street. So what you got, Dee?
I have a beautiful quote from the Howard Thurman.
Yes.
Who I am just being introduced to. And I'm so excited to learn more about him and his writing. So I'm glad you brought him up tonight. And that quote is, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And I will append to that quote, a quote I hurried up and typed while our brother was speaking. And to sum up that quote and everything that we talked about today, here's the final word from the one and only Bruce Epperly. Keep acting hopefully.
Yes. Keep
acting hopefully. So that's a quote from Bruce Gordon Epperly. You heard it right here on the God Squad tonight. I'm going to put that in my next book. Actually, you inspired me for a book. And while we were on here, I went and bought the domain because, like you said, technology is like that. So I'll tell you what it is after we wrap the show.
Okay.
I'm not going to put it out there.
Glory, hallelujah.
All right.
God's truth is marching on.
That's right.
The river's flowing. The process is moving. The Spirit is moving. I got a new writing technique from Bruce as we came on the show. So look at all this good we're doing in the world, and with a song in our heart, let us proceed and move forward. Bruce, thank you so very much for joining us. Safe travels to you as you go to Ireland, and as you continue to spread the good news.
Yes.
Thank you
and
so
continue being the light and the salt and the love that you are.
Amen. Thank you.
We thank you. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. I think
that's our show, folks. Like, subscribe, share. Check out Dr. Epperly's work on the internet, and tell everybody about the God Squad pod, because we need more people to know what we're doing. Thanks very much.
Good night, y'all.
Well, that was good.